I'm now going to read the beginning of the chapter when Werner arrives in Australia. In 1954, MS Skaubren, a ship chartered by the Snowy Mountains Authority to transport German tradesmen to Australia, departed Bremerhaven with Werner and more than 1,200 migrants, skilled workers and labourers. For over 5 weeks they journeyed via port side through the Suez Canal to Melbourne, the same route Sigrid and Wolfgang were to take more than a decade later. Werner shared a cabin with 4 other Germans and struck up a friendship with Hans, a teenager who, like himself, had no family. Hans confided to Werner, "I can't see a future in all this chaos at home. I want to put the past behind me and have a fresh start somewhere. I don't care if that means snow or sun. If sun, then all the better. I'm longing for a new life." Together, they did not participate in the strike for improved conditions on board the ship, led by baker Johann. "We can't have the same slop as these people who are displaced," Johann reasoned vociferously. "They are getting a free trip. Didn't we get a contract to work in Australia straight away?" The strike only lasted 2 days. Crossing the equator, Johann threw his heavy coat overboard. "I won't ever need that one again. I'm sailing to the land of the sun." Some tentatively followed his lead, but Werner thought about the definition of snowy mountains and reasoned that it might be best to hang on to his winter coat, a choice he was not to regret. In Melbourne, after promising to stay in touch, Werner parted company with Hans, who travelled by a wooden train to the assembly camp of Bonegilla. After passing yet another carpentry test, this time set by the Building Workers' Industrial Union, Werner was bussed with other skilled recruits to East Camp in Cooma. Werner was astonished by the vastness of a barren beige scenery with taupe to mustard-coloured vegetation spanned by an intense blue sky. It was devoid of snow or high-peaked Rocky Mountains, like in Austria. Bewitched by the foreign landscape, his frame of mind changed to confusion when the bus stopped at the railway station. He could not comprehend the sign, "Beware of poisonous snakes, spiders and venereal disease." The sight of German carpenters moving around in their traditional black, white-bottomed corduroy trousers with mother-of-pearl buttoned waistcoats and Homburg hats only added to his confusion. "I hoped I'd left all that behind me. Have I entered a time warp on another planet?" Werner's uncomplaining attitude was further tested on his first night. The early Australian spring weather produced below freezing temperatures, against which the thin walls of the hut to which he had been allocated did not provide much protection. He was thankful for not having to sleep in one of the tents for workers and to have kept his coat by not following Johann's example at the equator crossing. The primitive conditions of his accommodation and the camp atmosphere in general did not upset him, but tied in with his disposition and motto, "The harsher, the better." After a fitful sleep on a wire bed base without mattress, Werner's mood lifted at the sight of a magnificent sunny blue sky. Perhaps this was not such a bad move after all. Werner was put to work immediately, building new barracks, office buildings and workshops. To meet the demand of the growing settlement, houses were prefabricated in Kuma and then shifted around on a truck, a concept hitherto unknown and initially intriguing to Werner, who was used to working on immovable sites. He conceded that these dwellings were solidly built and insulated to endure the journey and climate. Open-mouthed and perplexed, he watched as a truck with a signage, "Danger, wide load following," rolled along the bumpy roads. "You obviously haven't seen one of these before, mate. Them lorries have only replaced the horse and cart recently. You should have been here at the beginning of the year when horses and sulkies delivered groceries. This ain't the big city, you know. You're in the country here, mate." "Is that so?" Werner, not comprehending most of what was said, replied to the short, stocky workman. He wondered what groceries had to do with houses on trucks and horses. Having passed several skill tests back home and since arriving down under, his confidence was tested by his inability to work the hard Australian timber despite the aid of his trusty lathammer. If the wood was aged more than 2 years, it was extremely difficult to yield. Werner soon copied the Australian style as explained by his fellow carpenter. "What you do, mate, you drill a hole into the hardwood, put grease into the hole and onto the nail, and then, only then, you hammer it in, like so." "They didn't teach me that during my carpentry apprenticeship," Werner gasped. Werner's loner temperament was suited to the rigid routine of getting up early for a 6 a.m. breakfast. He worked hard until lunch at 12 and continued in the same vein until dinner at 5:30 p.m. He did not enjoy the mush presented as food and missed his rollmops, sour gherkins and potato salad. But overall, he thrived in the rigorous conditions of camp life. Most of the recruits were single. Day and night they could be seated boisterously along the tables of the mess halls, eating, earning good money, coupled with boredom, added to the workers' attraction of partaking in drinking bouts and playing card games. While these serious money transactions took place, Werner kept to himself and his money remained in his pockets. He returned to the single man's quarters to read or sleep. When alone, using his newly purchased turntable, he indulged listening ad nauseum to the record of Wilhelm Kempff playing Bach's Prelude in C major. This recording was Otto's departure present. Werner's initial worries about possible hostilities by other nationalities towards him as a German turned out to be unwarranted. Outnumbered by the newcomers, Kuma locals seemed to be hesitant towards them, sometimes bordering on suspicion. Unsurprisingly, they were consistent with their "we speak English here" attitude. Werner took the occasional squarehead, kraut and han in his stride and quickly realized that the literal meaning of the word bastard was used in an affectionate sense. His expectation of Australia being a classless society was tainted by the realization that the social hierarchy did exist. Wage labourers ranked second to administrative staff. But he soon developed a sense of pride to be part of the Snowy Mountains hydroelectric scheme, the world's most complex multi-reservoir system to provide power and irrigation on a massive scale. Werner's first winter further justified the purpose of his thick coat. A blizzard engulfed Kuma, and the snow was so heavy that skiers were trapped 90 kilometers northwest. Not being a skier himself, he was more interested in investing his spare hours in learning the English language. Werner conscientiously attended compulsory classes and responded extremely well to the instructions of Mrs. Bishop. She was the wife of the Anglican minister and followed the Commonwealth's migrant English teaching curriculum. He never forgot her prophetic words. "Werner, if you keep applying yourself with such enthusiasm, you will do well in this country. You will be able to achieve great things. Indeed, whatever you set your heart on will land in your lap." A burden lifted off his chest. Someone, unaware of his past, was here instilling hope, optimism, and a glimmer of purpose into his life. Perhaps in this country I can do something worthwhile after all. Uncle Otto had tried to do the same for him back home. However, the insistent presence of Werner's brooding memories, Hamburg's devastated surroundings, and prevailing austere atmosphere made a new start exceedingly difficult for him. Werner now applied himself. He saved his money. While some workers drank, Werner enjoyed running and sometimes playing in the German football team at camp. He did not get involved in the occasional squabble between the German and Polish players. After fulfilling his 2-year contract, Werner decided to remain, continue to save money and buy a second-hand 2-door green Morris Minor. He liked to explore the surrounding area in his car, roads permitting, and appreciated the vastness of the hazy-hued landscape on a hot day. Boulders embedded like rough marbles in the soil, surrounded by dark beige-colored sparse vegetation, was a sight so unlike the lush forests at home. The all-encompassing soft purple mist on the horizon below the pale blue sky. Apparently, this desolate scenery seemed what his soul yearned for. By attending further evening studies, Werner improved his English language skills. He kept a schedule that occupied every spare minute, particularly when Mr. Prosser took an interest and taught him first aid. This enabled Werner to eventually become a volunteer with St. John Ambulance, where the ethos of being a good Samaritan and helping without a thought of reward appealed to him. Instead of playing in football matches, he now proudly attended as first aid officer. "I'm doing something useful, and I feel good being able to ease the pain of injured players. Healing others might help me to heal myself."